Hello and welcome to another edition of Mailbag. What is Mailbag? Well, Mailbag is a feature of the channel where you guys leave lots of comments on the channel and I attempt to answer those comments, or if I can't answer those comments, I throw it out to you guys who have more knowledge on some of this stuff than I do. So let's get into the first mailbag of this session. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. The next question or comment comes from Christian. And this was in response to samplers S750, S50, S6000, TX16W, a rant I did in September 2018. And Christian writes, those RGB to SCART leads aren't a couple of quid, they're £15.99 from Retro Computer Shack on eBay. I probably said they were a couple of quid. Yes, they are between 10 and £15, depending on where you get them. But thanks for getting in touch and stating the current price, to be more specific. I did make the video 3.5 years ago, so and would have obtained the RGB to SCART lead sometime before that, so it probably wasn't £15.99 when I actually bought my one. It probably was about 10 quid, I suspect. But what I've seen is a number of instances where the price of components really have significantly increased, and they have significantly increased over the last year. I mean, I've seen price inflation just shoot through the roof, and to be honest, there's no reason why price inflation should have gone through the roof, because at the end of the day, all these bits are quite old. I mean that in the nicest sense. The legacy synthesizers have a desirability, and that commands the price. But the components that go into them, yes, they're becoming a little bit rare, but they shouldn't be following the same price inflation, if that makes any sense. However, even if you have to pay £16 for this specific cable, when you see that price, that would be a natural reaction. I would then take a step back and say, is it cheaper to buy the cable, or is it cheaper to build the cable and get the pin outs and solder it all up yourself? And then the time you spend soldering together. And to be honest, when I look at this, I always take the thing of how many hours is it going to take me to solder this up? Probably about 2. And the component parts, which is probably going to cost me, I don't know, £2 or £3, I suppose, in bits, and then I can buy it for £15.99. But the reason I've put this seemingly silly question in the mailbag is to highlight the fact that people do not realise that platforms like, when you watch a video on here, sometimes time can have passed quite considerably between the time I made that video and published it and the time you view it. And quite often I get comments on the channel about, so-and-so does this now, and, the current version of the operating system is that. That might be, but the time of filming, you've got to remember, the time of filming, it was as it was, I said it was, if that makes any sense. So the reason I kind of come this is when I quote prices for things, the price I quote possibly, if my memory works, is the price I paid, not necessarily what you can buy it for now. And that's kind of the reason why I've highlighted this particular item on Mailbag, is just to sort of remind those of you that are watching these things, the 2 people that watch my videos, that time does march on, and YouTube, like film, is great because you see a character on film and think, oh God, doesn't she look young, or doesn't he look young, and then realise that that film was made 30 years ago and possibly they're not alive anymore. Anyway, hope that sort of made things clearer, and it's a point for discussion. Next comment or question comes from Zecon Music in response to Brexit. mucked up buying from Thomann video I did in March 2022. Zecon writes, "This has hit me the hardest on synth endeavours recently. I no longer source any second-hand synths from Europe as it's just not financially viable. It now ends up costing me the same as getting something from the US. Having to account for potentially 30% of the instrument price to pay on top of the initial cost when the postman shows up, it just isn't worth paying for larger items." And this is the problem with the whole import tariff system and how goods move around the world and how countries try to stop the movement of goods. This is what import tariffs is really all about. Import tariffs is really all about your country, wherever you happen to be in the world, trying to stop you buying goods from another country, possibly because they're cheaper, as in, you know, the cost of sale is cheaper, etc., etc., because they're having a bit of a spat with the other country. US and China is a cracking example of that. But that's what the import tariffs are really all about. The import tariffs are really all about to try and deter trade, try and deter people manufacturing things in cheaper regions of the world. Anyway, I'm not sure whether you purchased anything from Europe since the incident mentioned in the video. I am very careful when bidding on stuff based in Europe and to add the VAT to my bid price. And potentially duty as well when bidding, so that I know when I'm ready to pull out. The other thing that I also do when I'm bidding on stuff in Europe is just to make sure that I am actually genuinely bidding on something that is in Europe, because there are a lot of eBay traders that disguise themselves as a European seller when in reality they're a Far East seller. And you might not buy that type of good from somebody in that location, if you get my drift. So I do a bit more due diligence now on who the seller is before bidding on an item, especially if it's a fairly large value item like one of these things. That's just my personal preference because I have been stung in the past. Anyway, funny, I was bidding on something over the weekend and I pulled out £50, which would have been £70 including VAT and postage. But I know it was won by another UK bidder and they drove the price to £120. So I guess they got a little shock at checkout, and that's reality. That really is what's going on. You get this shock at checkout. You go boom, boom. I bought something for £120, and here's the final bill on eBay, Mr. Bidder, £150 plus shipping, of course.